At Fatima, the angel taught the little children to worship. They were given bodily gestures. They were even shown the majesty of the Blessed Sacrament suspended in the air. They were given Holy Communion, not by an extraordinary minister, but by an angel. Apparently, an angel receives it from a tabernacle, for only a priest, therefore a man, can consecrate. One looks over the Christian planet in our time and one asks questions. The Lord did talk of the bread of angels, the bread that came down from heaven, and we are trying our best to make sure that we will have enough priests to consecrate the same. But are we actually doing the right thing to see that it happens? We can't presume that the Lord will follow us. It doesn't quite work like that. One observes that actually a pattern is out there which we ought to notice, lest we fail to get the hint. In places where there is much honour and glory given to the bread of angels, and where our God is enthroned and handled as he wishes, then he honours those who honour him, and suddenly vocations come. Places of great liturgical beauty, great respect, draw, and not just on a human level. Coupled with charity lived, because it is coming from the ambit of the altar, that does work as a magnet. And young people are very intuitive when it comes to authenticity and the absence thereof. And so it is that if we start from another end, things actually might happen. On this day of the Lord, throughout the Christian world, there will be a great difference between one assembly and another, one altar and another, with regard to the way that the Lord is handled. Some years ago, a question was put to the congregation for the discipline of the sacraments and divine worship regarding what should and should not be happening in respect of the Eucharist, notably in the sphere of the tabernacle. Who should and should not be going to the tabernacle? And the answer came back that it was only a deacon upwards who had access to the tabernacle. And there is a logic behind that. We do not appropriate the bread of angels. It is in the custody of the church, but it is received humbly, not manipulated or owned. Actually, our own bishop had something to write about a self-service, and he wasn't amused either about some of the things that went on. And so it is that the Lord is not obliged to honour those who dishonour him. In places of formation where his authentic will is followed and sought, he is free to bless. If that is not the case, we can't be sure that he will be. And so there's no point in trying to work at something that he's not working at with us. If we are serving God, it is God that has to be served, and not our own will, to which our God must bend his own. In Ireland, the mentality of the quickie has come in and stayed in. Quite often in the mind of the people, a good priest was the fastest draw in the West. We see the fruits of that now. God is God. When it comes to the worship of our God, it is bound to be Eucharistic, for that is our God on earth. And we must ask ourselves as we come into the house of God, how He would be treated. In the reading at Vigils, we have something from the dialogue of St. Catherine of Siena, a saint very dear to us at St. Antimo. One time she wanted to receive the Blessed Sacrament, but she was too weak to move. The Lord put it on the heart of Blessed Raymond of Capua to celebrate that day, even though he had no intention of doing so. And at the fraction, it split into an extra part, which disappeared. Went into nowhere apparently, but it appeared before the saint at a distance, a great distance, and she was able to receive the Blessed Sacrament. We had recently in Ireland a case of somebody who was about to go off with the Blessed Sacrament, presumably, and it jumped out of his hand, was suspended in the air, turned round and went back to the ciborium, the altar end. Our God is discreetly asking us to protect him, and if we want him to send us priests, it must be under his terms. After all, the mentality is come into our existence now that there is no real need of priests, for lay people can do all that he does. But can they? Indeed, priests notice that when handling people can't get to church, if they scratch a little bit, they will find that the people there have only had access for a long time to extraordinary ministers, and their soul is suffering. For actually, for peace of heart and conscience, they needed not, at that point, the Blessed Sacrament so much as confession. For one without the other can be troubling. Only a priest can do certain things. We need to be careful. We are not God. It's not our church. And we serve our God under his terms, not our own. Santissimo Sacramentum